The first book that I'm going to read is A Little House Birthday. Once upon a time, a little girl named Laura lived in the big woods of Wisconsin in a little house made of logs. Laura lived in the little house with her pa, her ma, her big sister Mary, and their little sister Carrie, and their good old bulldog Jack. The winter seemed long to Laura and Mary. Laura and Mary began to be tired of staying always in the house, especially on Sundays. The time went so slowly. Every Saturday night, Pa filled the washtub with fresh snow and put the washtub on the cook stove. Soon the snow melted into water, and it was time for Laura and Mary to take their baths. Laura took her bath first because she was littler than Mary. Then Mary had her bath, and then Ma had her bath, and then Pa had his. Now that they were all clean for Sunday, and on Sunday mornings Laura and Mary dressed in their best clothes with fresh ribbons in their hair. On Sundays they could not run or shout or be noisy. They must sit quietly and listen while Ma read stories to them. They might look at pictures, and they might hold rag dolls nicely and talk to them. But there was nothing else that they could do. One Sunday, Laura could not bear it any longer, and she began to play with Jack and run and shout. Pa told her to sit in her chair and be quiet, and Laura began to cry. So Pa took her on his knee and cuddled her and told her a story. Soon that long Sunday was almost over, and Laura lay in her trundle bed with Mary, listening to Pa sing Sunday hymns with the fiddle. The next sound she heard was Ma by the stove making breakfast. It was Monday. Sunday would not come again for a whole week. That morning when Pa came into breakfast, he caught Laura and explained today was her birthday. Laura was 5 years old. Pa gave Laura a little wooden man that he had whittled for her out of a stick, to be company for her rag doll Charlotte. Ma gave her 5 cakes, one for each year. Mary gave her a new dress for Charlotte. Mary had made the dress herself when Laura thought she was sewing on her patchwork quilt. That night, for a special treat, Pa played Pop Goes the Weasel on his fiddle for Laura. "Now watch," he said. "Watch and maybe you can see the weasel pop out this time." He sang, "All around the mulberry bush, the monkey chased the weasel. The monkey thought it was all fun, pop goes the weasel. A penny for a spool of thread, a penny for a needle. That's the way the money goes, goes the weasel." But Laura and Mary hadn't seen Pa's finger makes a string pop. "Oh, please do it again," they begged him. Pa's blue eyes laughed and the fiddle went on while he sang, but he was so quick they could never catch him. Soon they were laughing into bed and lay listening to Pa and the fiddle singing. It had been a happy birthday in the little house in the big woods. The end. The second book that I'm going to be reading is The County Fair. Once upon a time, a little boy named Alonzo lived in a farmhouse in the New York State countryside. He lived with his father, his mother, his big brother Royal, and his 2 big sisters, Eliza, Jane, and Alice. Early one morning, they all set out for the county fair. Father placed under the buggy seat a box of pickles and preserves and jellies that Eliza, Jane, and Alice had made. Alice was taking her woolwork embroidery too. But Almanzo's pumpkin had gone to the fair the day before in the wagon. It was too big to fit in a buggy. The roads were filled with people in their best clothes, all going to the fair. Mother and Royal and the girls got out of the buggy at the fairgrounds, but Almanzo rode on with Father to the sheds and helped to unhitch the horses. Almanzo wanted to see the animals first. He went past the tall grandstand into the church building, where Mother and the girls were helping to prepare dinner. Everywhere men were shouting, "Step this way, only 10 cents, and prizes for all." Finally, Almanzo and Father had reached the stock sheds. In one tall stall, there were 3 large gray horses. Their necks were thick and their heads were large, but their eyes were quiet and kind. Almanzo felt important and grown up talking about horses with Father. Next to the horses, there was a crowd of men and boys around a stall. Not even Father could see what was in it. Almanzo squeezed between the legs until he came to the bars of a stall. Inside it, there were 2 black creatures he had never seen before. They were something like horses, but they were not horses. Their ears were like rabbits. Ears and their tails were almost bare. While Almanzo stared at one of the creatures pointed its ears and stretched out its neck and reached. Hee-haw! Hee-haw! Almanzo yelled and hurried back to his father. "It's only a mule, son," Father said, "and you're not the only one who's scared either." Almanzo and Father looked at the cattle and the young steers and the sturdy oxen. They looked at the big white hogs and the smaller black hogs. They looked at the sheep. Almanzo had not seen his pumpkin yet, but it was time to eat, and Almanzo was hungry. The church dining room was already crowded. Everyone was talking and laughing, but Almanzo just ate. He ate ham and chicken and turkey. He ate potatoes, gravy, succotash, baked beans and onions and bread. He ate pumpkin pie and custard pie and vinegar pie. There were berry pies and cream pies and raisin pies, but he could not eat one bite more. At last it was time for the pumpkins to be judged. Almanzo saw at once that his pumpkin was the largest of them all. He tried not to care too much about the prize, but he wished everyone knew that the biggest pumpkin was his. The biggest judge took one pumpkin and cut a slice out of it. Then the judge cut open another pumpkin. Finally, he cut open Almanzo's own big pumpkin. All the judges looked carefully at the pumpkin slices. They tasted one slice and another. Almanzo could barely breathe. Finally, the tall judge took out a blue ribbon out of his pocket. He stretched out his arm slowly and then pinned the ribbon to Almanzo's pumpkin. Father's hand clapped on Almanzo's shoulder. All at once, Almanzo could breathe. He was tingling all over. The judges were smiling, and ever so many people said, "That's a fine pumpkin, Almanzo." Afterward, Almanzo went walking with his father through the fair. They watched the foot races and the jumping contests and the throwing contests. The boys from the town were all in the contest, but the farmer boys won almost every time. Almanzo kept remembering his prize pumpkin and feeling good. Driving home that night, they all felt good. Alice's woolwork had won first prize, and Eliza Jane had a red ribbon for her pickles and preserves, and Alice had a blue ribbon for her jellies. Father said that the Wilder family had done itself proud that day. Almanzo was the proudest of all. The end. Thank you guys for listening to this book. I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I did.